Hello, welcome to Read and Discover. My name is Reed, and today we're going to discover 5 recommendations in nature and science nonfiction. A couple of months ago, Allison from Allison Talks Books did a video about the divide between fiction and nonfiction readers, which I think is a little crazy because I am someone who reads probably about 50-50. But in her video, she mentioned that she had not read much in the way of nature and science nonfiction. And so I decided to browse my shelves for some recommendations that would be real quick reads that you didn't need any basic foundations for, that any person who doesn't normally read nonfiction could jump in and enjoy. So I'm going to share those 5 recommendations with you here. I debated about what order to put these in, and I decided to go in reverse chronological order from when they were published. So the first book on the list here was published in 2021. It is The Nature of Oaks by Douglas Tallamy. Douglas Tallamy is best known probably for his book called Bringing Nature Home, in which he makes the argument that people should be planting native plants in their yards to encourage insect life, which would then provides food for birds and everything, and so that everybody in their own yard can be doing their part to help. And one of the genuses that he recommends has the most impact is oaks. And so in 2021, he came out with this book where he follows all of the ecological relationships that oak trees have and the different events that if you're watching, you might catch happening at oaks in your own yard or in your own local park. So it's arranged with each chapter being a month of the year, and you goes through events and relationships that you could look for in the oaks in your own yard or local park. Moving back to 2025, we have How to Clone a Mammoth, The Science of De-Extinction by Beth Shapiro. In this, she goes through all of the technological challenges that existed, 10 years ago, that still existed 10 years ago at, at cloning extinct mammals for your Pleistocene park. Anyone who's read this would not have been surprised by some of the discussions around Colossal's announcement this past spring about them cloning a dire wolf. So if you're interested in the science of cloning extinct animals, very, very interesting read. Our next book takes us all the way back to 1997. It is The Return of the Wolf to Yellowstone by Thomas McNamee. So this was, probably many of you have heard about the reintroductions of wolves to Yellowstone National Park and the impact it has had on the vegetation of especially in the riverine areas of sort of due to the predator pressure. The elks are pushed out of the bottomlands and don't overgraze it the way that they did when the wolves weren't there. This is written back in a time where they didn't know for sure if it was going to work. There was a lot of political opposition to the reintroductions and everything. And so they were reintroduced in 1995. And so this book is basically like a journalistic look at the day-to-day of that reintroduction effort. This is a little dated as somebody's wanting to get sort of the same story, but from a more up-to-date perspective. There is a series of books called The Alpha Wolves of Yellowstone by Rick McIntyre. The first in the series is The Rise of Wolf 8. I can't necessarily recommend this book because I haven't read it yet. I have read the 4th book in the series called The Alpha Female Wolf. So I haven't read this. This didn't come out until 2019. So it's written, a couple decades after the reintroductions and But this particular wolf is one of the wolves that was introduced to the park in 1995. So this is a series that, again, I haven't read this particular book, but I did read the fourth in the series and flew through it in a couple of days. So this is probably also a good option. Next we have Longitude by Dava Sobel, the true story of a lone genius who solved the greatest scientific problem of his time. If you're not familiar with this situation, is sailors used to face a real navigation problem of they could easily determine their latitude, but it was much more difficult or nearly impossible to determine their longitude. And so there was several governmental prizes from Spain, England, for anyone who could solve how to measure longitude, especially at sea. And this tells the story of sort of that race and a clockmaker from England who really came up with the most effective way of doing this. This was first published in 1995. I think there's millions of copies of this have been sold. So there's a bunch of different versions. This particular one is a 10th anniversary. I checked out from my local library just to hold up for this video, because my version, which was published in 1998, is the illustrated Longitude. It's the same book, except there are nearly 200 illustrations to accompany it, including pictures of the actual devices that are currently housed at the Greenwich Observatory, of some of the different iterations of the devices that Harrison created for solving the problem. The only thing my only complaint about this is it's not a good size for holding while reading. So you may want to try a more compact version for reading in bed. But if you really like the story and interested in seeing more of what it was, then you might want to try to get a copy of the illustrated edition. And finally, all the way back to 1963, we have The Wasp Farm by Howard Ensign Evans. Evans was an entomology professor at Cornell at the time that he wrote this. He first moved to Ithaca in the 1950s and purchased an 8-acre farm. And each chapter in this tells the story of a different species of wasp that would be encountered on his farm, and the different ways and just the natural history of how it would supply food for its nest and produce the next generation. I know most people think of wasps, they think of the social species like yellow jackets and hornets, but there's actually only one chapter on social wasps. Most of the book focuses on solitary wasps. So again, this was first published in 1963. This is a 1985 paperback edition. And so that's 5 books, 5 science and nature nonfiction books that you could jump into and without having any prior knowledge of the subjects. And I think just enjoy the stories that are in those books. And all of these, except for the Return of the Wolf to Yellowstone, are less than 200 pages, or less than 250 pages. So they would also fit for shorty September reads if you happen to find this video right before or during September. So please leave a comment if any of these have made it onto your TBR. You can leave an emoji or a comment. Look forward to reading your comments. Thank you.